Hello everyone, hope you all are safe and sound. I'm Lanka, Assistant Professor of English, St. Joseph's College of Arts and Science, Cuddalore. In this video, we'll be discussing the poem Nothing by the famous poet William Wordsworth. Before going into the actual poem, let us see an introduction to Wordsworth. William Wordsworth was born in England in 1770. He is most famously acknowledged as the father of British Romanticism. He is the co-founder of the Romantic literature in England along with another famous poet, Samuel Taylor Coleridge. Jointly together, they published the famous lyrical ballads in 1798. Wordsworth is remembered as a poet concerned with the human relationship to nature and a fierce advocate of using the language of the common man. The two major themes of his poetry are his love for nature and sympathy for the ordinary man. He was born in the Lake District area of England, which has now forever associated with William Wordsworth. As a young man, Wordsworth went on a walking tour of Europe, which deepened his love for nature and sympathy for the common man. He expresses emotions inspired by his early experiences of nature as an unfailing source of joy and purest passion. He describes his thought of poetry as originating in emotion recollected in tranquility. Now, this brings us to mind how he defines poetry. Wordsworth defines poetry as the spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings and emotions recollected in tranquility. For Wordsworth, he gives the utmost importance to feelings. This is what he demonstrates in all of his poems. His sister Dorothy Wordsworth has played a significant role in his writing career as well as his personal life. He was made poet laureate in 1843 and he breathed his last at the age of 80 in 1850. This slide shows you some of his major works and I shall read them out to you now. Lyrical ballads, preface to the lyrical ballads, some famous poems like The Solitary Reaper, Nothing, Daffodils, and the Prelude, just to mention a few. Having seen a short introduction to Wordsworth, let me give you an introduction to the poem that we'll be discussing here, Nothing. Nothing is a very beautiful poem by William Wordsworth in which he draws from his childhood memories. This poem was written by him in Germany when he was in his 20s. When he was a young boy, like many of his school fellows, Wordsworth was an impassioned nutter. This poem describes one of his nutting expeditions in which he expresses his joy of nut gathering as a young man. The poem is also an expression of the poet's belief that there is a divine spirit in every object of nature. Okay, so having seen a short introduction to the poet as well as the poem, now we shall go into a study of this poem. Every slide consists of 10 to 15 lines, and I shall be reading out the lines and explaining to you side by side. So let me read out the first few lines of the poem. It seems a day. I speak of one from many singled out, one of those heavenly days that cannot die, when, in the eagerness of boyish hope, I left our cottage threshold, sallying forth with a huge wallet o'er my shoulder slung, a nutting crook in hand, and turned my steps towards some far distant wood, a figure quaint, tricked out in proud disguise of cast-off weeds, which for that service had been husbanded by exhortation of my frugal dame, motley accoutrement of power to smile at thorns and brakes and brambles, and in truth more ragged than need was. So in these 15 lines, we see how the poet is getting ready for one of his nutting expeditions. Now these nutting expeditions are a great source of joy to the poet. Here he is describing one such heavenly expedition. So as you read the lines, you will be able to notice the descriptive quality of the lines. So you can imagine to yourself this young man getting ready to go into the woods and collect some nuts. So as he starts to leave the cottage, he is filled with the eagerness of a young boy. And he goes forth with a huge bag slung over his shoulder and a nutting crook in his hand. And he turns in the direction of the woods, where he can find some trees from which he can gather some nuts. And he looks a very quaint figure. He looks very strange as he is tricked out in proud disguise. Here tricked out means he is dressed in some cast-off weeds. That refers to old clothes which he had to wear as he was forced to do so by the lady of that cottage. And motley accoutrement refers to the different kinds of extra equipment and extra clothing that he had to wear. And these old clothes that he is wearing, they have the power to smile at thorns and brakes and brambles. So, because he is wearing old clothes, he need not worry about his clothes getting spoiled by him walking into or in the midst of thorny bushes or brakes or brambles. So we can picture this young boy in our mind, and it brings a smile to our face. We can imagine how he is dressed in all cast-off clothes, too big for him, and he is excitedly starting on his little journey. Okay. So over pathless rocks, through beds of matted fern and tangled thickets, forcing my way, I came to one dear nook, unvisited, where not a broken bough drooped with its withered leaves, ungracious sign of devastation. But the hazels rose tall and erect, with tempting clusters hung, a virgin scene. A little while I stood, breathing with such suppression of the heart as joy delights in, and with wise restraint voluptuous, fearless of a rival, eyed the banquet, or beneath the trees I sat. So now this young man reaches the woods, and is choosing a path which has not been visited by many people. And because there is no path, he has to push through matted fern and tangled plants, and he forces his way, and he reaches a beautiful little place that has not been visited before by anyone else. He can realize that this place is unvisited because he cannot see any broken branches with withered leaves, which are all signs of people who have visited earlier. So here Wordsworth just wants us to understand that wherever man goes, destruction follows. But here nobody has been here before, so the place looks so beautiful. And here he can see the hazel trees that have grown really tall and straight, and there are tempting clusters hanging. And he describes this scene as a virgin scene. See, the very word virgin helps us to understand clearly that this is an untouched place. So our poet, he's standing there for a little while, and he enjoys the beauty of the scene. His heart is filled with joy to see such untouched beauty. And very wisely, he restrains himself because he is fearless of a rival. There is no competition here for him because he is all alone. He knows there is no one else to share this bounty of nuts in these woods. And describes the nuts hanging on the trees as a banquet. So, unafraid, as there is no one else to compete with him for these nuts, he just sat beneath the trees. Among the flowers, and with the flowers I played, a temper known to those who after long and weary expectation have been blessed with sudden happiness beyond all hope. Perhaps it was a bower beneath whose leaves the violets of 5 seasons reappear and fade, unseen by any human eye, where fairy water breaks do murmur on forever. And I saw the sparkling foam, and with my cheek on one of those green stones that fleeced with moss under the shady trees lay round me, scattered like a flock of sheep. I heard the murmur and the murmuring sound in that sweet mood when pleasure loves to pay tribute to ease. So here we see the poet has seated himself under the trees. He's very relaxed, he's enjoying the beauty around him, and he just plays with the flowers that have grown in abundance in that place. He compares himself to a person who has been traveling for a long time and in great expectation. And suddenly, when he least expected it, this man is blessed with sudden happiness when he seemed to have lost all hope. Now, this is the state of mind in which the poet finds himself. The beauty of the place, the lovely flowers that have not been seen by any other human eye, the lovely little streams which are flowing there, the lovely soothing sound, the murmuring sound made by the streams. He looks at the sparkling foam, and he rests his cheek on one of the stones which are lying scattered around. And he describes these stones as green stones fleeced with moss, because those stones are covered in moss. He is describing them as green stones under the shady trees where not much sunlight can penetrate. So he compares to these rocks lying around to a scattered flock of sheep. And in that atmosphere of peace and quiet, he sits at ease and enjoys the beauty around him. And of its joy secure, the heart luxuriates with indifferent things, wasting its kindliness on stocks and stones and on the vacant air. Then up I rose and dragged to earth both branch and bough with crash and merciless ravage, and the shady nook of hazels and the green and mossy bower, deformed and sullied, patiently gave up their quiet being. And unless I now confound my present feelings with the past, ere from the mutilated bower I turned, exulting, rich beyond the wealth of kings, I felt a sense of pain when I beheld the silent trees and saw the intruding sky. Then, dearest maiden, move along these shades in gentleness of heart, with gentle hand touch, for there is a spirit in the woods. So till now the poet has been sitting very quietly under the trees, enjoying the beauty, appreciating the untouched beauty around him. But then he is reminded of the purpose of his visit to the woods, and he gets up and drags down the branches of the hazel trees with crash and merciless ravage. Can just observe the words that are being used by the poet. So till now he was using such words of peace and quiet, but now the tone of the poem has completely changed. He destroys the beauty of the place. He breaks the branches. Mercilessly he destroys the beauty of the place. And that quiet place, the virgin scene, is now described as being deformed and sullied. But in spite of this, the trees patiently gave up the treasure that they held. And before he could admonish himself for spoiling the beauty of this place, this mutilated bower, he turns away and he cannot prevent himself from exulting. This exultation is a result of the nuts that he has gathered in his sack. He feels rich, richer than the kings, but at the same time, when he looks at the silent trees, now broken and ravaged, he can feel a sense of pain. The trees are silent, but the sky is intruding. He sees the sky as an intruder because he feels that the sky is a witness to the destruction that he has wrought upon that place. And then he addresses the dearest maiden. Now here the dearest maiden is Dorothy Wordsworth, and he makes a suggestion to her. It's more of an appeal, and he tells her Dearest maiden, move along these shades in gentleness of heart. So he is appealing to her to be gentle, unlike him. He says, move in gentleness of heart, with gentle hand touch, for there is a spirit in the woods. So here, Wordsworth seems to acknowledge that there is a divine spirit in every object of nature. And with this appeal to the dearest maiden, Wordsworth concludes his poem, Nothing. So as we have seen, this is a very descriptive poem. He beautifully portrays lovely woods and himself dressed in old clothes with a big bag on his shoulders and a nutting crook in hand. And we have a description of the beautiful virgin scene as he describes it. We can picture to ourselves the lovely hazel trees, the flowers blooming all around the place. So he describes a place of beauty and peace and joy. And he goes on to say how man very easily and in one stroke of his hand can destroy the beauty of nature. Wordsworth has proved himself to be a high priest of nature, and he finds spiritual significance behind the serious manifestations of nature and its objects. Every natural scene awakens in him what he himself calls the visionary power. Okay, so we have come to the end of this discussion of the poem Nothing. So I hope you could understand the poem and I hope that you enjoyed. So this is one of my favorite poems written by Wordsworth. So for you to get a few more ideas about this poem, I have given to you on the slide some of the works that I have referred to, and I'm very thankful for all these sources that I could get my hands on. And hopefully you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching this video. If you liked it, please like, share, comment and subscribe. Thank you.